Well, it's time for another entry in what I'm thinking I'm gonna call Wizardly Writers Read. Hey everyone, welcome back to Andrew's Wizardly Reads, and as always guys, I am Andrew, and today we have got another author reading here for you. But before we get into this, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, as it does help the channel grow, and you can check the description box down below for links to all of my social media, including links to the Discord and information about my Patreon. And today on the channel, we are going to be showcasing Andrew D. Meredith as he reads an excerpt from his Needle and Leaf series from the first book, Thrice. I have already read this book. I greatly love this series. I don't know if I said enough greatlies, or really love Needle and Leaf. We get to experience in this reading some Joven and some Leaf and their interactions and things of that nature. It's great. Please check the description box down below if you want to go ahead and pick up a copy of Thrice or Collation, which is also done by Andrew D. Meredith. And if you like this reading, just know that Andrew D. Meredith is also the audiobook narrator for these books, so you are getting a sample of the audiobooks as well. Without any real further ado, I'm going to let Andrew take it away as he reads an excerpt of Thrice for you.
Hi, I'm Andrew Meredith, and I'm going to be reading an excerpt from the book Thrice. Joven opened his eyes with a start and rolled over. Leaf was fast asleep on a bed of moss near Joven's head. He sat up and wiped his eyes. The wall of roots and intertwined rocks they'd sought shelter under cast deep shadows from the light of dawn. A single bird flitted from tree to tree, giving tight warbles of warning to others. He stretched as he stood and peered out over the lip of the hole. The sun had not yet appeared over the surrounding hills, but the forest was lit by a ruddy red. A deer moved through the dense trees, climbing the nearby hill. Joven watched it begin its ascent to the upper meadows. It froze in its tracks. Ears whipped about as it watched something to the north and then bolted up the hill and out of sight. After a little while watching for what scared the creature, Joven lowered himself down and started to roll up his blanket. Leaf woke up yawning and reached for his Sword of Danger stick. "I'm hungry," he said. "We'll find that brook you heard and boil some water for the tack." "I like tack." "You're the only one I know who does," Joven said. He lifted Leaf out of the hole and then pulled himself up. Leaf was already walking down the easy slope toward the silver water that was much more visible in the morning light than it had been the night before. The boy gathered dry sticks as he walked and had a nice bundle as he reached the flat rock next to the water's edge. Joven joined the boy and filled his pot with water, setting it on the rocks. Together they built the sticks into form, and Joven started the work of lighting the kindling. Joven stirred some salt in with the rock-hard tack, which softened quickly in the soon-boiling water. Then he poured the gruel out into their wooden bowls, washed the pan, and set more water to boil to fill their jugs. "Papa Jove?" Leaf asked as Joven fed the fire and tended the water. "Where are the birds?" "What do you mean?" Joven asked. "I don't hear any." "We probably scared them off by being here." "They haven't flown away before." Joven listened. Leaf was right. There had never been quite this level of heavy silence. He looked down at the water, which hadn't even started showing signs of warming. Joven picked up his bowl of gruel, swallowed the rest, and then leaned down to rinse their bowls, dipping the pot into the water to cool before placing it back in his satchel. "Let's move away from the stream to where we can hear better." Leaf smiled at Joven. They followed the stream down to a log that crossed the water, balancing their way across, and then up to the other side. There was a small ridge which Joven and Leaf went over, to a small footpath that hid sight from the stream. Just as Joven came down the path, he heard the shuffle of rocks tumbling across the other side of the valley. The ridge blocked most of the sound of the brook, and there were still no birds. He took Leaf's hand, and they walked faster down the path, coming to a pair of boulders. "Let's take a rest," Joven said, pointing to the crevice between the two boulders. "We just started," Leaf laughed. "I'd like to sit and listen for birds," Joven said. Leaf nodded and climbed up to a little ledge only a boy or squirrel might sit on. Joven dropped his pack and then sat still, one eye on the path, watching for movement. It reminded Joven of waking before even bakers rose, and the deafening silence held him in his bed. Every once in a while the sound of the stream could be heard, But there were no creatures moving, and as Leaf pointed out, no birds calling. Then the trill of a songbird lit up the forest, and Joven sighed in relief. "My sword of danger says we can go now," Leaf said. "All right, boy." They stood and walked down the path together for a time. The brook came alongside them, and Joven took up a pot of water. At an old fire circle, they set the water to boiling while they chewed on dried meat. Joven saw a family of rabbits stick their heads up out of a hole. "I know we didn't make it far today, but let's set up camp and see if we can't catch those rabbits." Leaf's eyes grew bright. "Can I keep one?" "I'm afraid not, boy. These will be for food." Joven looked around the green wood to set a trap, and a good place to set their things where they wouldn't be covered in dew by morning. He took out his extra rope and laid out a tripwire near the log they'd settled down next to, then prepared his spring trap for the rabbits just out of their hole. Leaf was traipsing about the woods, having finally settled on a sort of danger stick he liked. He was poking at various rocks and soon found a snail making its way across a log and squatted down to watch it. The twang of the green stick pinned between two rocks suddenly jerked, and the bowstring Joven had used for the snare whipped tight around the leg of the rabbit as it tried to dart out of the way. It kicked and fought, but Joven easily took it by the scruff of the neck and lifted it up to consider it. "We've not been out here so long that you'd be a bad idea to eat," Joven said. The fur sitting atop the green moss was the first thing he saw before he realized he was in the hare's snare himself. Two eyes peered out from under the fur cap, watching Joven intensely. Joven reached for the knife at his belt, slowly. It wouldn't matter. They had locked eyes. The man was 20 yards away and had come up on them in silence. He stood, suddenly, covered in tight deerskin leathers. He was tall and lean, the unmistakable features of our Caravadzi nomad. The huge knife in his hand sent a shiver of fear to match the struggling rabbit in his hand. Joven chucked the animal at the face of the advancing hunter, the third bodyguard of Ilan Daz. The rabbit scrabbled and twisted in the air toward the attacker, who with a single swipe cut the creature down. He flew across the forest floor at Joven, who struggled to turn and run. He heard the man gasp and fall to the ground, finding the tripwire Joven had set. Joven saw Leaf stand up to consider the two men chasing after one another. As their Caravadzi struggled to stand, Joven motioned for Leaf to get down. The boy understood the command and disappeared. Joven threw himself over a log, took a rock off the ground and turned to throw it, but the Caravadzi had disappeared again. "I'm sorry for what happened to your master," Joven called. The bodyguard came out from behind a tree and charged at Joven faster than he could track. Suddenly, on top of him, one knife lost in his tumble with the tripwire, the other grasped firmly. The two of them fell to the ground together. Joven took hold of the man's knife hand, and the man moved the knife into his other hand. "I could care less what you did to that man," the Caravadzi said in his thick accent. "I am here to complete our mission." He shoved down on the knife, meant to find purchase in Joven's ribcage. Joven struggled to keep it from inching closer. "I'll not die easy." "You will die easy, and the boy is young enough. I should have no trouble taking him back, even if I have to stick him in a sack and carry him there." Joven roared and shoved the man up and off him. The other man flew back like a rag doll. The rage in Joven snapped into a control of his actions, and he lunged toward the other man. But the hunter was faster. He rolled away, and then suddenly, on Joven's back, his arm around the bigger man's throat. It was sudden and overwhelming. The rage that coursed through his blood caught like a waft of smoke in a breeze and disappeared. Blackness replaced the gray tones of the world, washed by the anger coursing through him. All feeling melted away. There was a sound of his own heart thundering in his head. The numbness of his arms returned, and he rolled over. The Caravadzi man stared down at Joven, his arms held back by some unseen thing. Then up through the leathers of his clothes, hundreds of little mossy vines crept up, encasing his body and holding him in place. Joven struggled to his feet, taking deep breaths and looking around. Behind the Caravadzi stood Leaf, his hands outstretched towards the man, a verdant carpet of moss crawling across the ground from the boy toward the man. "How are you doing this?" the Caravadzi said, staring at Joven. "Are you Vedmak?" Joven shook his head. He found the man's knife nearby. "Who sent you after me and the boy?" "I'll not say," the Caravadzi said. "Even at knife point? My family's debts are paid if I succeed or if I die. That is all that matters. If you are Vedmak, then I doubt any will succeed. Leaf, go down the path and wait for me there." Leaf looked up at Joven and nodded. As he turned to leave, the moss at his feet melted to the earth. its disappearance slowly creeping toward the man, now nearly encased. "Do it quickly," the man said, "or else I'll pursue you from here to Null." Joven nodded and turned the knife in his hand. When he joined Leaf on the road, the boy walked next to him in silence. "I've asked you not to do that," Joven said softly. "You were dying," Leaf said. "So this time I'm grateful. But you know that if you continue to do that, one day you will die." "Why?" "I don't know," Joven said, "but all the stories say a Vedmak dies young. You must not do that." "All right, Papa Jove." "What does your sort of danger say now?" Leaf looked up and smiled. "It says that nothing can hurt me if you're here." Joven gave a wan smile at the boy and tousled his hair. "I won't let anything happen to you."
And as always, it is a delight to hear Andrew D. Meredith at work. He is a good friend of the channel. Please do me a favor and do him a favor and check out these books. I promise they are great, great, great reads. Needle and Leaf is more of a Slavic fantasy, and then Collation, which he did not do a reading for you here, is more of kind of your classical sort of elevated fantasy. It's very good. I'm 3 books into it already, and I just have nothing but love for the writings of Andrew D. Meredith. So do yourself a favor and make sure that you are not missing out on these amazing books. I want to give a huge thank you to Andrew and also reiterate that if you want to be showcased on this series, just drop me a DM or a message or an email. It's all in the kind of contact me on my YouTube page, and we'll see who is up next. But I hope you're doing well. Until next time, peace out. Stay magical. Bye. And as always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons. Thank you for supporting my passion and my hobby.